Hey, how's it going? It's Tim Brown, and this is the Hook Better Leads podcast. And today I'm with Carlos del Pozo of TeamEngine. How you doing, man?
Good, sir. How are you doing?
Doing very well. We are talking about why you have a labor shortage, and it might not be what you think. What are some of the reasons that people sometimes think that they can't find great applicants?
Yeah, a few of those are one, they think they need more applicants, just don't have enough applicants. Another one is they think, well, I do have applicants, but they're not the right ones. And probably the third one that we see is, yeah, these applicants, we got them, they look good, but they're just like not hungry enough. They don't want to work.
I've heard these before. I've heard this. People don't want to work. So you think that these are happening, but the answer might surprise you. So to keep on watching, we're going to go through exactly why you can't find great applicants. And then we're going to also talk about how to solve that. But first, can you give me a 2-minute backstory of you personally and the company?
Yeah, sure. So I'm one of the co-founders, and my background in getting to TeamEngine, I was in the Army. I was an infantry officer in the Army, then went to business school, and then coming out of business school, decided I wanted to go out and look for a business to buy and run. So with a background as an infantry officer, I focused on companies that had sort of like a field workforce, more of a blue collar workforce, and talked to a bunch of owners and looked at a bunch of companies and came across this universal theme, which was, hey, we've got work to do, we've got demand, we're turning down business because we don't have the people to do it. And thinking about how I would solve that problem running these businesses, I looked around and in particular looked for technology solutions and didn't really find any, and didn't find the ones that were actually going to work for those companies. So ended up joining forces with a couple of experienced software company builders, and we set out to build a solution for those companies with folks in the field.
That's beautiful. I love that. What are the real reasons? So we talked about the misconceptions. What are the real reasons that people are struggling to hire great applicants?
Yeah. So the thing that we see is, like, when we talk to folks and dig into their process, we realize that it's really the process that is often where there's an opportunity. Folks are often getting applicants, but at the end of the day, they're not getting hires. Or at the end of the day, really the problem boils down to just labor capacity. Like I talked about, I was talking to these companies who were turning down business because they didn't have the folks to do the work. And yeah, hiring is a big part of that problem, but that problem starts, before hiring, and it extends beyond it. It's a combination of adding the folks that you need and keeping the folks that you have to make sure that you have, the ability to do the business. And unfortunately, folks really zero in on just like, how do I get more applicants? How do I put more raw material into the top of this machine? But what we often see is that folks, when we look at the machine, the machine isn't quite right.
Yeah, I mean, basically you can pile in money to platforms like LinkedIn or Indeed or Facebook ads even to try to get people to be aware of the job and people to apply. And then the question is like, are these the right people?
Yes.
And then sometimes like what we talked about before the podcast is just like, sometimes the right people don't respond when I ask. And then I'm sporadically, as the owner, sometimes like able to send a message on like Thursday, 3 p.m. and then like Saturday. And those may be not the best times to communicate with them. So we're not going to do a hard pitch for the software, but can you give just a few of the high level like functionalities of the software, and then we're going to go into more solutions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, the solution that we found to be effective for the folks that we work with across, a variety of different blue collar deskless industries, it really boils down to 3 key things. And the first is really the format of communication, how you're reaching out and engaging with applicants as well as your workforce. And what we find is that, of all the options that exist out there, which, include phone, email, etc., texting is the most effective. And one of the beautiful things about the text message format is that you can really do a lot with it within software. So that's one, that text message format. The second is best practices. For a lot of the companies
so for one second before you go to that, so people could just improve their process right now by texting the applicant as soon as they apply, versus even if you didn't get the software, you should be texting with applicants.
Absolutely. And the reason is that a lot of the folks that are applying for these types of jobs are not like really heavy email users. So they're not really on top of their email as much as a lot of the folks who are reaching out to them.
I was just going to say, like, I'm emailing these people that I think are awesome, and then I don't get a message back for 2 days, and then I count them out because I communicated in a way that they don't sit on LinkedIn. They're not like me, where I'm just like, I live my life on these platforms because I have to. They're not bad people because they didn't respond in somewhere that they don't normally hang out. Right. So I love that solution.
Yeah. And what we see is just like that. There's just this gap between the office and the field. And part of that is just in the way that we communicate with each other. So that format is really key. The second is best practices. A lot of the folks that are trying to hire maybe don't actually have an HR background or specifically a recruiting background, so they probably don't know like what the best practices are. But there are some best practices out there, and so part of what we do is embed those in the software. But the last piece that kind of
can you give an example of that maybe somebody could use even if they don't use the software? Like, what's a best practice that's like, you should be doing this now?
Yes. When you post a job, your job description you need to think about it as a marketing piece. You need to think about communicating the benefits of your company, of your job, and lead with that, not lead with all the things that is going to disqualify a potential applicant.
Yeah. I literally have even taken to a note. I don't know if this is really like a best practice, but I do like a list. Like, I literally I put an emoji next to each of the benefits, like the 401k, I like make it very easy to scan. And I do think of it as a like almost like an ad versus like, I'm not going dryly through everything. I'm hitting it with emojis and bullet points and all this stuff. So
yeah, and that's the right approach. But a lot of folks think about that job description as they're just going to take their internal job requisition, which is like very compliance oriented, and they're going to really attract some great applicants by showing them, how much they're going to be lifting and like all the, terrible weather they're going to be like.
Pounds,
Yes, exactly. Which is very important that they do that.
Yeah.
But you can put that after like all the reasons that somebody should be reading that in the first place.
And somebody told me to do that with the emojis thing and all the benefits. And they said basically every time you post about this job. So like, I'll go on and like do like either a Facebook post or a LinkedIn post or something like that. I try to use that list as much as possible. I have a note on my phone and I try to use it on every piece or almost every piece that goes out about that job offer, because I'm trying to tantalize people, and they can't get excited about your job unless you say something exciting, like like, all the cool things about working at your company. That the culture is good and you got parties every couple weeks and it's a fun thing, maybe like whatever it happens to be that's cool about your company. But people they can't read your mind. They don't know everything about that. So like, you have to share it. You have to turn it inside out. And even though it's uncomfortable, you have to say that stuff. You have to say all the stuff that you're doing internally.
Yeah. And I think that, folks often complain that maybe folks in the job market, applicants or employees, are like transactional. They might join a company and leave that company for another 25 cents. But then you have to think about, as a company, like, what are we doing to make it not transactional? And if you're just posting the job requisition, you seem like every other company. You treat like your applicants and your employees like every other company. What's going to be the differentiator? 25 cents.
That's good. Like so sorry, I'm kind of giving our examples, but in our
Yeah.
job posts, we talk about how we know personally, like basically we do a little underdog story of like, we were
Yeah.
underdogs in the job market, and we are open to talking to you, whether you're from, non-traditional backgrounds, like, whatever it happens to be. You could be a whatever race, whatever gender, whatever sexual orientation. And we're
Yep.
like, we have been turned down for jobs for stuff that we feel like we could have done a good job. Like basically we grab them by the heartstrings a little bit and say, we're also underdogs. And if you're an underdog, you
Yep.
might fit here. And
Yep.
I think also, so like, do something. I'm not saying it has to be like that, but I'm saying do something that's like grabs a little bit of heart in
Yep.
this, and like tells a little bit, like show your innards a little bit.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I don't know, that's one thing that kind of stood out to me, like trying to show, like you said, a little less transactional. I do
Yeah.
think one thing, like, so we talked to a lot of roofing companies, and one thing that they could easily do is simply open up their one of their biggest ones, which is the sales position, to
Yeah.
the other half of the population. They are currently thinking of it as men, and they
Yep.
keep looking for men. And if they just
Mhm.
like opened it up, and like so many trades companies could just open it up. And I'm not like a hardcore feminist or anything here. I'm just like literally like, I believe you have so much more population, and we have an amazing female salesperson. And I've seen so many amazing female salespeople in roofing. And I think just, it's a really obvious one, but open it up the way you're thinking of it. It might be a totally different person than you imagined in your mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that you have to think creatively. Yeah, I think it's creative to the folks who may be out there with a mindset about how they hire and who they look for. And I think, the current labor market, one thing we're seeing, and I think is very encouraging, is that it is compelling folks to rethink their assumptions around hiring in a lot
That's
of
a good
ways.
thing. That's a good
That
thing.
can be a very good thing.
Any it feels like a terrible thing sometimes, when there's not enough people and you can't get people in, but every terrible thing has a seed of an opportunity.
Yep.
And if it breaks you open, and if it forces you to think differently, it might be the best thing that ever happened to your companies.
Yep, absolutely. No, completely agree.
Are you sick of what passes for leads these days? What's wrong with shared leads or Facebook ad leads? Yeah! Not much, unless you want to be the lowest bidder on every job. I wear a lot of hats, but search engine marketing and website, I've passed off to a Google specialized team.
And then the last, quick thing about, how we add value there is just around automation. And, well, I'll tie this back, Tim, to what you mentioned about, you get an applicant, you might see if they're available on a Thursday, you reach out to them, maybe, try again on Saturday, Sunday. And I think if, I asked you if that was an inbound lead, how fast you would reach out to them, I think your response would probably be different. And I suspect that's true of all the other folks, might be listening to this. And I think that that's part of the key there as well. And that's where automation can come in, is make sure that you're doing the right things, making sure that those best practices are happening consistently over a format that's effective like text, but that those things are happening fast as well. So it's not a, once every 2-3 days kind of situation.
Wow. That's a really good mindset shift. If you just treated your applicants like they were leads.
Yeah. Well, and I think we, the history that I think a lot of folks maybe, come with is that the constraint wasn't people. The constraint was leads. And for many businesses and many markets today, it's kind of shifted. It's inverted. And so I think that one of the keys that we see in terms of how to improve your hiring process, if you just took the mindset of what would I do if this was business, if this was a lead? And you think about how your funnel should work, speed, best practices in that funnel, and you apply that to your hiring process. That in and of itself will unlock a lot of success.
Yeah, I think you really challenged me to think different today, because I certainly was. It hurts a little bit. Like if somebody doesn't get back to you, like an applicant, you're like, is that the type of person I want?
Yep.
But then you think about all these nuances around, like if it's late on a Thursday and they're not on that platform all the time. I think that kind of jabbed at me a little bit in a good way. Is there any other like solutions that you believe? So people think there's a labor shortage, but then when you put out a job application, there's 50 people.
Yeah, right.
or even 20 people or 30 people. So that's not a shortage. That's a quality issue potentially. Are there any other solutions that you have for like, filtering or how else can people get the right applicants?
Yeah, I think another key component of it is that, again, thinking about getting leads, I'm just gonna like go back to that again. You don't always you may have like one or two ways to get leads that are really effective. But you don't necessarily just want to be like totally beholden to those specific channels all the time. You typically want to diversify your sources. And something that we see is that a lot of companies, because job boards are so easy to get up and running and posting a job and getting applicants, they tend to come to really depend on them as like their sole source of applicants. And they are definitely really important and can be effective, but they're just not sufficient. If you think about the role that a job board plays, it's where active job seekers are spending their time. So somebody who is looking for a job is going to go on a job board, they're going to find your job posting, and they're going to apply. But in a really constrained kind of labor market like the one we have, that's just not going to be enough. You got to get out in front of different audiences, because actually probably a lot of the folks that you want have jobs today, and so they're not sitting on Indeed, seeing what's available. So you have to be like finding ways to expand your audience to get in front of the folks who may be working other jobs. And so actually getting in front of a variety of sources, whether online or offline as well, to get in front of active or passive job seekers as well, is really important thing that a lot of folks overlook.
That's huge, man. All this it's such a simple shift to just think about it as leads. Well, where we come from, leads are air. And I think I'm like more creative about it, but for some reason I haven't been as creative about it for job seekers. So such a great way to think about it. I'm currently realizing I'm really over reliant on LinkedIn, whereas I should be getting in a little bit more platforms and yeah, even in that situation, if you're advertising, they have to go into the part that's jobs.
Yep.
Generally. So they have to be already active, and I got to get in front of them in more ways. Also, you're talking about referrals before this too, referrals with current employees. So what are your suggestions on making that effective?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of folks really like referrals, and for good reason. Referrals are awesome because folks kind of come pre-vetted in many cases, and you just tend to have better longevity when you have like friends working with friends on the team. So there's can be a lot of benefits to it, and realizing this, companies build referral programs. They have bonuses and that sort of thing, and there's some best practices around those, like making sure that they're tenure based, and you pay out after a referral is around 90 days, or that kind of thing. So what we find, actually, the constraints on getting more referrals tend to fall into two buckets. One is just keeping the desire for referrals top of mind for your workforce. So it's a marketing problem, internal marketing problem again. And the second is getting those referrals to actually, getting them actually converted, getting those to actually be applicants that you can review. And so we've come up with some ways to sort of help there. But basically what you want to do is make it so that when your employee is, at that barbecue on Sunday afternoon talking to their cousin about, the cousin, looking for something new, and what that might be, and your employee wants to refer that person, you don't want them coming in on Monday and having to go get a form, or going and talking to a supervisor asking what's the next step, all that kind of stuff. Because also it's probably not going to happen. So it's not even just that specific process is frustrating and inefficient. It's just probably not going to start in the first place. What you want is to make sure that they can actually take action as soon as possible. So any way that you can make it really easy for your employees to give you names and phone numbers, which is really what you should be asking for, not, hey, go fill out this 2-page document that asks where you went to high school and those kinds of questions. You want to make it as easy as possible to find out names and phone numbers for those folks.
Yeah. But if they jump through 20 hoops, then they're probably a great employee, right?
I mean, they're probably an incredible, best employee ever. But it's just realistically. Yeah. I mean, other folks are making it way easier for them. I was just going to say,
to me, some of those people, if they have all that time on their hands, or they want to do stuff like that, maybe they aren't a high performer. That's kind of my joke. Excuse me.
No, absolutely.
But I want to give you a moment before we end the podcast to just kind of call people to action regarding what would be the next step if they wanted to try TeamEngine and maybe a little bit of a pitch here.
Yeah, sure. So we really help companies ensure that they have, the high performing workforce they need to get the job done. And so if anybody out there finds that they're struggling, and it may be the case that they think it's an applicant problem, we'd be happy to talk about them. And we do provide a free trial so that folks can actually kick the tires on the software to figure out how automation, how the embedding of best practices, and how the text message foundation can actually allow them to put their, both hiring and, retention on autopilot.
Love that. And some of the features you talked about earlier sound amazing. Lastly, if you have to put out a job post, where do you put them out? Do you put them out on 5 different places, or what are just for people? Because that's a question we get. Where do you put these out?
So we put them out in our software. And then our software sends them out to different job boards like Indeed and ZipRecruiter and other important ones. And cool. we automatically ask for referrals from our workforce, and we have some sort of unique local job boards that we found work for us. And so we take a unique link from the software and plug those into those job boards, so we can direct those applicants into our software, and we can track where they came from, so we can see which sources are working the best for us.
That's amazing. I'm sold. I want this software. If I'm not a home service provider or a contractor, am I able to use this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work with companies in a variety of industries: landscaping, manufacturing, construction, the trades, distribution. Basically, if you're a company that has the bulk of the workforce that's not in the office, we're a good fit. Then also, we are obviously a software company, and we use the software very effectively in-house as well. So awesome. Yeah, we can add value in a lot of different contexts.
What's the domain, somebody wants to go do?
Yep, it's TeamEngine.io. So TeamEngine.io. You can go there, and we have a bunch of free resources for folks who want to DIY, but you can also go there to request a trial.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on today. And thank you everyone for watching or listening. The podcast is put on by hookagency.com, Hook Agency all over social. All right, bye.